Oh, there we go. Bruce, we see you've joined the meeting. Can you hear us? Hmm. Well, I think he's in, but maybe just has his video off. Um, oh, here comes Allison.
So this one was hard to get into because it doesn't say join Zoom meeting on the one that's on the calendar on the website.
Hmm.
So I'm on my iPad because I didn't have time to send me the meeting invite. It takes forever for something to answer on Alan's emails. Which will make it hard if there's people that weren't on the committee that wanted to Zoom in or make comments. Okay.
Well, shall we make progress anyway? Do you think we've time to go? I've sent Bruce a text. Bruce says that he can hear what's going on, but it won't let him speak or video.
Oh, did he say join by Wi-Fi?
I don't know.
Oh, there we go. Can you hear me?
We can.
Yes.
Where are you?
Well, I figured that out, but now I can't do the video, or I'm trying anyways, but I can hear
Well,
you.
it's better that we can hear you than see you.
That's good.
I'm sure you imply nothing by that. All right. Well, presumably, until we get another chair, I'm the chair, right?
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's get going then, since we've got quorum and we've gone 5 minutes over time. So let's call us to order, if we would, please. Thanks all for coming, and thanks particularly to Brian Baker, who's here first, and for Sophie, who's standing in to facilitate the program. And thanks everybody else for turning up. Now, the first item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. Only a couple things here that I'd say about the agenda. Does anyone have any issues they'd like to raise with the agenda? Any late items? The two items that I've referred to in the past, I'd like to kind of just comment about again. First of all, there's no matters arising on the agenda, so we don't have a continuity of what we did last time and this time. That's a kind of recurring issue. But the other one is the issue that I know this is going to trouble you, Kristen, but for the last 5 years, I've asked for the municipality to explain what it has been doing in its efforts to maintain the lowest possible cost, what cost savings can be achieved. in water, because we've had exponential rises that have been surprising to many, and now taxing people. And we're proposing
So
again
Brian,
this one.
you could raise that under your under Kristen's report.
I
As a
could,
question.
but
Yeah.
it really should be an item on its own, because it's a recurring item that's on everyone's mind, and we should have it front and center, really. But I will do if you like.
Yeah.
And the other issue I'd like to have on the agenda is the absence of a cost sharing meeting. We were going to meet with the three West Side LACs. We're going to meet to discuss that, and that hasn't happened. I know that's in a report, and you've got a couple of ideas about how you might proceed with that, but that's a matter of disappointment, really.
I'm guessing Kristen will cover that in her report because she did on the others.
Indeed, I'm very pleased to hear that she will. I know that she has done elsewhere, but the issue that should be on the agenda so everyone can see it and identify that as a matter that we have to resolve. But having said all that, with those comments, I wonder if we have if someone could move for the motion of that the King Edward Bay Water System Local Advisory Committee approve the agenda.
Make a motion, Brian.
Thank you for that. Any seconders?
I can second it.
Thank you for that, Brian. And so then we must move on with that having been approved, the elections of a chair. Any nominations?
Come, everybody's staring the other way.
I'm seriously absent now, Brian.
Yeah.
Well, somebody has to nominate somebody.
I'll nominate Brian again.
Jonathan, you're so gracious at that.
You're very good at it, Brian.
Yes, here.
Are you
Well
seconding that
practiced
motion, Bruce?
Yeah, I second that.
All right, you'll squeeze another year out of me. Well, thank you for that. Any further nominations? Can we do this by assent? Ask if there's anyone voting against that proposal. Well, let's just accept it by assent then, and the election of a vice chair.
What's the role of the vice chair in this situation, like in practical terms?
If I was to expire, you would take over.
You run the meeting if he isn't there.
That's
basically.
it. Okay.
So that sounds like a self-nomination, or shall I second that?
I'll second it.
Sure.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you, Brian.
Oh, this is going to be confusing. We're going to be referring to Brian with an I and Brian with a Y.
Yeah, that's how we do it.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Well, thanks very much for that, Brian. And now adoption of the minutes, which has previously been circulated. This is the minutes of the meeting held last year. Have you all had a chance to read them?
Yep. I'll motion to adopt the minutes.
Do I have a seconder?
I'll second.
Thank you, Bruce. Any dissent from that? Then we can accept those by assent without a vote. Public comments. Do we have anyone online wanting to?
No, we do not.
No one?
No.
Okay, well, I think we've given that enough time then. Finance. This is item 5.1. Kristen, you're on.
Thanks. Sorry, I'm a bit surprised. Usually we go to Patrick.
Oh, where's
first.
Patrick?
Yeah.
Oh,
But we
it's
can do
because
budget first.
Well, it's just because we have it at 5.1, that's all.
Yeah, it is.
Well, actually, can we go back to adopting the agenda? Because I didn't catch this one.
Yeah, I didn't either.
I thought, Sophie, you'd send out the revised agenda. And what
I-
I've managed to print isn't. So I guess you didn't update agenda notes. Sophie sent out a revised agenda today and it had the,
Yeah, I have the revised agenda in front of me and finance is the next item.
oh,
Yeah.
but it doesn't have the drinking water report or anything?
It has that
Yeah.
attached, but it's not in the agenda itself as a
Oh,
item.
It's
Yeah,
an
that's-
information item? Ah,
We don't have any public works update in the agenda.
Yeah, there's no Patrick update in this one. Is that could be an error?
I think it's an oversight.
yeah,
Okay.
and it's probably best to have Patrick go before the finance in case, because he's
Sure.
got things that are related.
Yeah, I
It
can
does seem to
provide-
flow better.
Yes.
Can I motion to amend the agenda then to insert Patrick after public comments and before finance?
Could someone second that, please?
Yes, seconded.
Thank you, Brian. All in favor?
Aye.
You know, wave, I guess. I suppose that's as easy to as a send. Good. Well, thank you for that. Let's approve that then. That evaded me. I wonder if the original agenda had Patrick
Mm.
first.
Can't remember.
Mm,
I don't have that
Yeah.
now.
Not to worry. We've sorted it now. We won't miss you out, Patrick. You're
mhm. Sorry about that. I'm not sure how that happened.
you're well spotted. Years of experience, Alison. Well done. Patrick, you're on then. Let's do you first.
Okay. Well, I can provide an update on the water system improvement project that's focusing on two main elements. One is upgrading the Bowen Bay wells and interconnecting the systems. That's ready to go. Essentially, the tender documents are complete and the construction permits in place from Vancouver Coastal Health. There was a bit of a delay in that there was some well exploration going on in the large property in Blue Water that Ian Stewart is planning to subdivide and develop, that had some very promising results initially on the well testing. It turns out we do need the Bowen Bay well upgrade project to address the supply deficiency, and it just improves resiliency to have more water supply from different aquifers. It's unlikely that we were able to, or we'd be able to obtain all the equipment and tender and construct before summer 2024. The plan now is that we'll be combining the tender with the water main project that we've got going on the island. One of them is the Blue Water water main replacement project. The other is the Eagle Cliff Cove Bay connection water main. And the reason for that is to try and improve the attractiveness in the marketplace and improve the chances for better pricing. This overall project is costing a lot of money especially for Blue Water residents, and everything we can do to limit that pain is important. So we're looking at construction in the summer and fall of 2024. For the water main replacement project, where the design is nearly complete, and as I mentioned, it would be tendering it with one package with all of the other works. So we expect that to proceed in the same time frame, starting construction this summer. In terms of the King Edward Bay water system, one of the requirements of Vancouver Coastal Health was to complete and follow up on GARP assessments. So we've done stage 1 GARP assessments for all of the wells in all of the operating wells in the King Edward Bay system and the Bowen Bay system. That's groundwater at risk of pathogens, essentially looking at a series of risk factors and identifying them as low risk, unable to determine, or high risk. We were working with Matthew Mudd on that, the same hydrogeologist that's done a lot of work for us on the west side. So there are some risk factors. Aren't able to classify the wells as low risk based on the stage 1 assessment. We're just getting some proposals now for some additional assessment work to follow up on this stage 1 GARP assessment. It's possible that depending on the results of the additional assessment, there may be additional treatment required. And practically that would mean likely adding UV treatment to the King Edward Bay chlorination shed. And that would be also treating Bowen Bay wells once the upgrade and interconnection project is completed. So that's something else we'll be following up with. Something else that one other thing to update you on is that we have been seeing some strange issues with well number 1, the TW1 well in King Edward Bay system. Really high sediment coming out of the well to the point that we're not running that well currently. So what we need to do, I think, is get precision pumps or someone to camera that well and really determine what's going on, whether there's something wrong with the liner or why we're having those problems. So that's a summary of the goings on in the west side and King Edward Bay system in particular.
Thank you for that, Patrick. I wonder if there are any questions or comments people would like to make about it.
Pardon me, I have some questions. Where is the well number 1 with the high sediment issue located? Or is there a map somewhere we can see these?
It's just across from it's near the playground.
Okay.
Just across from the chlorination shed.
Okay. And does that cause a significant issue, or is it manageable at this time of year? Or what's the impact of that?
Yeah, it's manageable at this time of year, but it is it is one of the 3 operating wells in the system. So
Yeah.
it is a significant issue to not have it in service. So we'll be looking to sort out what's going on there as soon as possible.
Okay.
I see Jonathan is, sorry, Brian, carry
Yeah,
on.
absolutely. Jonathan, go ahead. I've got more, but Jonathan, go.
Yeah, no worries. I was just wondering with regards to that sediment, are there common causes of sediment in a well of this age, Patrick? Is there something that you'd expect to see that would cause this, or is it unusual?
It's unusual. It's not something that we'd expect to see. So that's why I think we need some further investigation to determine what's going on.
And do we anticipate being able to get a camera in there relatively soon?
I hope so.
Okay, thank you.
Bruce, did you have something you wanted to comment on?
I was just wondering if there could be any link to the construction issues, both on the Arbutus Point development, but also the new one going on down by Bowen Bay. Could there be any relationship there with all the construction and agitation going, blasting, so forth? The reason I asked the question is I've had wells in the past where things are running smoothly, and then we get a neighbor that does, and specifically in the Cape Roger Curtis area, where they did a lot of blasting, and all of a sudden we had serious sediment issues on one of our customers' wells. So I'm wondering if there's any relationship there or not.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say I know enough to be able to rule that out.
Okay.
Thank you, Bruce. Thanks for your response. Also, if I might add one issue arising from that revelation, is that as I recall, when Blue Water was struggling with having wells deteriorating, we were advised at that time that the reason wells do develop sediment and start failing is because they're allowed to run dry and they're overused. And as a result of the overuse, their sediment essentially falls in. Otherwise, it wouldn't. It would be held out by the pressure of the water in the well. But when the well gets too low too frequently, sediment will accrue in the pipe as a result of that overuse. Now, you can see where this is going, can't you? That for years, we've been asking that our wells are protected by not being overused by its linkage to blue water. And here we have one of our major well, one of the greatest givers we have of water to King Edward Bay that we've already bought and paid for, that looks like it's starting a process of deterioration, which is a concern to me. And it's a concern that we flagged from the very beginning. And we'd be anxious that we don't lose that well because of the decisions that have been made not to embark on this process of repiping blue water and finding a new source of water to support them for a decade.
I don't know whether this is recoverable or not. I imagine it probably is, but I need more information.
Well, I think I'd like it in the minutes that this is will cause significant anxiety because it's indicative of a well that's been overused, as we have seen previously in Blue Water when they lost their well, their last remaining well at the time. It makes me think that we're on the verge of losing this one. And if we are, we know exactly what the cause is. It's been overused for a number of years against our advice and our warnings. And if we could have that in the minutes, I'd be grateful. You have something to say, Jonathan?
Yeah, I just want to add that we had a community meeting where it was brought to our attention that one of our wells was being consistently run dry in that particular summer where the water was being pumped into the ocean, and another well was put under significant stress. And we were shown the charts and tables that had indicated that at least one of the wells was consistently being run to what everyone was telling us was its absolute lowest limit, and we were highly advised to not do that, and yet it was done repeatedly to maintain.
So there really must be at some point some way of we're going to have to maybe it'll be nothing. Maybe we'll fix this, and that'll be great. Maybe we'll have we'll put the camera down there and manage to clean out all of this new sediment that's arrived, and it'll go back to normal. That'll be fine. I'll go happy again. But if it does not, there may be significant costs and disadvantage that will accrue that is not the liability of King Edward Bay.
Can I ask another question?
Please do.
Back to the new blue water wells that I think had a peak of excitement, but maybe it's tailed off a little bit in terms of their productivity. But are they still, Patrick, to your knowledge, going to be producing and useful wells there? This is the ones in that property that you were talking about?
Yes, yeah. There's one well that's being developed there as part of phase one. There will likely be at least one more developed in future phases of that development, but it is a good well, and it will be producing substantially more than what the development needs, particularly in the early phases. So we do have substantial new supply coming online, one from this well that's in the Blue Water development, and two with the the upgrading of the 3 Bowen Bay wells and the interconnection of those wells with the King Edward Bay system. So we do have there's a challenge that we're looking into here with one current well, but the capacity that's being added is far greater than that.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you for that, Patrick. But you're talking about that 9.4 gallons a minute well that's happened that they've now discovered in Blue Water. That's good. The connection, I expect that'll be take some relief for Blue Water. But still, we don't want to lose a well that we didn't need to lose. And I wonder if we could be assured that you'll give us regular updates on that particular well, the outcome of that investigation.
Yeah,
I'd be grateful. Thank you. Okay, well, let's move on from that. Did you have anything more, Patrick, or have you?
Nothing more unless there's any other comments or questions.
All right. Let's move on then. Kristen.
Okay, great. Thank you. So I have just used the typical status quo method of developing the budget for 2024. As you can imagine, it's probably going to look a little different for 2025 and going on, given that the Blue Water project is going ahead. So you mentioned earlier about why that cost allocation model hadn't been done earlier. Brian, I guess, with the discovery of the new well in Blue Water Park, I think we were all really eager and hopeful that it would be kind of the panacea to the water issue, and it was easy to just wait to see how that played out and get the assessments done of what the production capacity of that well was going to be. So you're right, we didn't get that work done in the fall like we had planned originally. Obviously further from what Patrick's saying here, the well is not as productive as they had originally hoped that it would be. Certainly going to add something to Blue Water's capacity, but it's not going to solve all of the problems. So we do need to go ahead and come up with a cost allocation model. So in the summer, we will get back to that piece. Certainly in the first 4 months of the year is not some time that I have capacity to work on any new cost allocation models. It's going to take a lot of work and it's going to take a lot of time, and I want to make sure that we have that time dedicated to do that work. So once we get through our budget process and our year-end audit process and our taxation, we will turn our minds to that one more time. So you can expect to hear from us establishing some new meeting dates in the summer in order to get that work done. Back to the budget. Again, it's just kind of based on the same model that you're typically used to seeing. We always start with a zero-based budget, and we put in there what we think we need and what will address any unexpected extraordinary events that come up. And keep in mind that everything that is not spent in the year goes straight into the King Edward Bay Reserve. So last year you ended up putting $60,883 away into the reserve against a budget figure of $34,314. So that's great news. What else do I have in the budget? Oh, so something new this year, we have some new testing requirements coming out of Vancouver Coastal Health Authority. They are looking to increase the amount of trihalomethanes and haloacetic acid testing. So I have put an additional allowance provision in there to undertake those testing. Patrick doesn't have any planned capital expenditures. Any of this work that he's talking about is not a capital expenditure. It's a maintenance operating budget type thing. So it won't show up in the capital section, but it will be recorded under the maintenance expense. Oh, yeah, I didn't mention, we have not yet settled our collective agreement with our outside utility workers. So our wages were underspent last year. But I have put a provision in there. There is going to obviously be some kind of negotiated settlement with our outside workers, which will compensate for the 2023 fact that they were working under the same collective agreement. They weren't provided with any COLA or wage increases for 2023. So the coming in under budget was not surprising to me. And we hope to be settling that contract in the next few weeks. Did you have any questions about the budget or the before I kind of move on to the rate structure?
There's a financial plan here. Were you going to come on to that before or after?
I'm just finished talking about that.
Well, there are a couple of issues on that financial plan that are interesting. It's complicated because we've got a new document here, haven't we? The first agenda package had the document with it, and now we have another one. So here would I could just look at page 7 for a moment. There's the proposal about. Are you going to go to about the proposal for the 5% increases?
Those are the utility rates. I haven't talked about that yet. So if you want me to continue, I'm happy to start there. But I just wanted to talk about the budget first. Did you have any questions about any of the line items in there?
But but continue with the budget, and then you'll get on to the fund plan. Thank you. Sorry to interrupt you.
Okay, so I'm done with the budget. Now we'll move on to the utility rate piece. Yeah, so we have discussed for a couple of years now moving the billing structure to a rate that is more heavily dependent on metered rates. So I am recommending that the King Edward Bay system move to the hybrid meter rate bylaw. This is the same bylaw that has been in place in Tunstall Bay for several years, and we've had we believe a great deal of success in implementation there. It's easy to administer and really promotes water conservation, so that is really a driver for why we are recommending implementation of this rate to council. As well, it'll be a harmonized rate among all 4 water systems. So there'll be one bylaw which has a uniform rate across all 4 systems. The budget revenue target for 2024 is set at 72,305. And across all of the water systems in the municipality, we are recommending that we increase those rates each year by 5%. So for this year, in a transitional year, a couple, or maybe last year, I did hear Don Heth's point about elasticity of demand and, wanting to make sure that there was, not a big change to consumption levels among residents. So I have built in something that I've called like a stabilization rate, and that is an additional $100, so a flat rate of $100 on top of the flat rate suggested, in order to address the potential risk that that people's consumption behavior may change and we may actually experience a drop in revenue. So I am proposing that in order to implement it, we do a mid-year implementation. So we bill flat rates for the first 6 months of the year, and then implement the metered rate effective July 1st. We would do a quarterly billing at the end of September, and then another quarterly billing at the end of December or early January. And that would mean 3 full billing periods for 2024. The sending out the flat rate bill just before June would give me the opportunity to communicate that change in advance of the metered rate portion coming into effect, and that would give people the opportunity to be aware of it and enable them to change their consumption habits if they wanted to try to reduce their water consumption and save a bit of money. I have included 3 years worth of consumption data for people, so we'll put that on the website. That will enable everybody to kind of compare where they're at, as well as do a calculation to figure out exactly what their quarterly bill is likely to be. So,
Yeah. May I ask a question about this one?
yeah, of course.
So this is, I think we're looking at page 8 of the agenda where this, the 3 billing periods are listed. Is that, am I in the right place?
Yeah, that's some workings to estimate what the revenue would be using a very conservative average daily consumption.
Right. Okay. But it all, so then this hybrid model, the hybrid part is the variable piece that, for example, is in the July to September for October billing and the October to December January billing.
It just means that it's a combination with a you know, a flat rate and a consumption base on top of that.
I guess what I was getting at was is I was trying to find out how variable it would be. Like if those are pretty small numbers for revenue for those
Yeah.
variable bits.
Yeah.
So is like if somebody's a large consumer of water, are they going to be, is there also a step change in the flat rate, or is it they just get the flat rate and then the variable bit will rise higher if they use a lot more?
It does. It starts out initially for the first 4,500 gallons, imperial gallons for the quarterly billing period, and it's incremental for every increasing 4,500 imperial gallons.
Okay, so that's already built into the flat rate is actually
Yeah.
also a stepped.
It's built into the variable rate.
Oh, it's in the variable bit. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Anyone, have you finished, Kristen? Or
Yeah, I
question?
think so.
Jonathan?
Yeah, I noticed.
Oh,
that-
sorry, page 12 of the agenda was just the piece that that anybody could look at their average consumption and then do a an estimate of what their quarterly billing would be. So yeah, I'm going to put all of that on the King Edward Bay webpage and make that available to everybody so they can have a look.
Jonathan?
Yeah, I just noticed the comment about the non-connected properties,
Mhm.
development lags. Is there a specific timing? You may have mentioned the review will take place next year. Is there a time frame with which to evaluate because there are still quite a few non-connected properties within King
Yeah.
Edward.
Yeah,
Just-
there's still, I think, 24 non-connected at
The
this point. And
shortfall could extend for quite some time if we don't address it.
yeah, I mean, under this plan, the reserve fund begins to drop. So, you know, I don't want to see that. Yeah, I don't want to see that.
Is there the possibility with the non-connected properties of doing a kind of a blended average of the connected properties and applying that as a non-connected kind of annual rate?
Yeah, I mean, it's not arbitrary. I don't know what the logic is, but the in most of the districts, so I just followed what the practice had been in most of the districts. The non-connected properties were set at 60%. I can't tell you what the rationale was behind that, but it just seems to be what it was. Now, when you have, you know, Hood Point, which has 2 unconnected properties, and you have Blue Water, which has 3 unconnected properties, it doesn't make that much of a difference. But in King Edward Bay, where there continues to be a significant number of unconnected properties, I think that that's potentially another source of, because they're going to connect and
And we're maintaining all the infrastructure for them while they sit on their property. So I'm wondering,
exactly. I agree.
that's why I'm thinking maybe an average of the connected properties rates could be an acceptable rate to charge the unconnected properties.
Yeah, I agree.
That would be very helpful, Kristen. Thank you for that. And thanks for bringing it up, Jonathan.
Thank you.
Any other
You're
comments?
muted, Allison.
Allison, sorry. You're muted.
Are we charging the unconnected properties a flat rate?
Yes,
Okay, because I can't sort of see that in here.
yeah.
Okay. And that flat rate will be half of the regular rate?
I think
or-
it's 60%.
Okay. So where does that, which chart does that show on?
It doesn't, it's in the, it just shows the gross number. On page 8, it shows that 24 non-connected properties are being charged 198.
I don't have page numbers on mine. I'm
I
on
just,
the,
This is
I
the
just
original
worked-
agenda.
yeah,
I'm on the HTML one and it's not showing page numbers.
I'm just worried that if they remain unconnected for an extended period of time, it causes us some significant budgetary issues in terms of
Yeah.
maintenance.
I agree.
Do we need a proposal for that, or is something you feel you could just advance, Kristen?
It's my intention to advance it. I mean, there is room to make a recommendation to increase the proportion of non-connected to connected
If you,
at this meeting,
you-
if that's something that you,
it's unnecessary if you're going to proceed with it anyway, and I don't think you're going to get any resistance from us.
okay.
Any other comments before I've got one or two things I'd like to raise? All right. Well, I wonder if I could just raise a couple of things, if you don't mind. I'm a bit maybe it's nothing, but the issue of billing people 3 times a year, and is that an added expense?
It's added postage. It will actually, starting 2025, it'll be 4 times a year because it will be every quarter. This is just a transitional because we've already been through so much of this year that we're doing the flat rate for the 6 months. But in 2025, it'll be 4 bills a year. It is, so it'll be more postage. It will be absolutely less, from my perspective, it's an administrative efficiency. It is far easier to build this model than the model currently in place.
And I think you're also commented in one of the other meetings that you're hoping to start towards electronic bills and people just logging into their account and checking their bill and just getting an email to say their bill's ready.
Yeah, people can
Yeah.
look on my account and get that information now. I don't know that there's a lot of uptake on it though.
Well, you can do like the banks do and charge them an extra $2.50 a month if they want, or $2.50 if they want a printed statement.
Yeah, the piece that will mitigate that though is going from we have the ability for people to look at it online, but actually delivery of those bills online. That's not something I think that should be out of the question. It's just not something we've had a time to pursue just yet. But
Well,
yeah,
I'm
I can tell you that saving time stuffing envelopes and mailing them out is certainly high in my books. Yeah.
Well, I'm grateful to you for replying like that. I mean, it is a bit perplexing that we're concerned about costs, and we've got, I don't know, over the last 5 years, I expect we've had it must be something in the order of a 40% increase in costs over the last 5 years. I'm guessing. I'd have to check that. Now we're proposing another 30% change over the next 4 years. I'm concerned that we're doing anything that might add to the costs of this matter, that we're using more hours in the municipality, that we're using more stamps, that we're licking more envelopes, whatever.
Yeah.
We mustn't be doing anything that adds costs unnecessarily.
Yeah.
And having 4 billing phases rather than 1 in a year seems to me like we're adding costs. And I just don't understand it.
Not from my perspective, it's not really the administrative inefficiencies of the billing structure the way it is. It's not just my staff, but it's the public works staff as well.
You can also see from a
it is
cash
a
flow perspective,
significant efficiency time saver from my staff's point of view.
Well, let's accept that as being absolutely a reasonable thing for you to suggest, but it does obscure the rate increases by paying. You don't actually see the fullness of the rate. which is,
Ah,
I'm sure, not your point, but some other people will see that as the point.
Mhm.
Um, uh, and I can also see the cash flow argument, you know, that you get regular returns throughout the year. That will also be helpful and maybe save money because you're not having to do whatever the municipality has to do to meet those costs. I get it. I get some of that. But nevertheless, it's an issue. But there are two other financial issues. I'd just like you to respond to the issue of 5% over the next couple of years. You've used 5%, but you haven't used 5% of what the cost was, of what the actuals were. You've used 5% of what the budget was, but the actual spend was less than the budget.
Yeah.
But you've nevertheless put 5% of the budget. So your actual increase is more like 6.5%, 7%.
Sorry. Yeah.
actual in budget increase over actual is a higher number than 5%. Yeah.
So it's not really being expressing the what the community might think of as being an accurate figure. It's not a 5% rise; it's a 7% rise.
Yeah. I'm concerned that there's not enough going into your reserves regardless. I wouldn't suggest reducing that number anywhere lower than what is being suggested.
Well, then let's do it plainly. Let's talk about actuals then, so people get a real knowledge of what the cost is.
So why were supplies and services so much lower than budgeted? That's the big difference.
Yeah. There's also
Yeah, like I said, we provision for extraordinary things. Supplies and services is typically one of those line items that we tend to just make sure that we have enough in there. And, you know, like for now, we've just learned that we're going to have to do some work on this well number 1 in King Edward Bay. There's got to be budget there in order to
But isn't
pay for
that
those
repairs
things.
and maintenance?
Well, not
Yeah.
not a super significant amount, no. So, you know, it could be supplies, it's a subcontractor, or it's a maintenance issue. It's kind of an apple or orange kind of thing. We've got to have that money there in order to address these unplanned expenses that are going to occur.
I'm not disagreeing with that concept. It was just supplies and services to me, I guess, in our water system, supplies are things like the chlorine for the chlorine shed and replacing a UV tube and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And services, I guess I wouldn't lump them together. So that's, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So
I think the
budgeting,
budget is pretty tight, to be honest.
Is it that when you hire a subcontractor to do like a well investigation, it ends up under services and therefore not under maintenance? Is it just basically an accounting
yeah
thing?
It comes down, you know, I might classify it as a maintenance issue. Somebody else coding the invoice might say, no, that's a subcontractor. It's not a significant issue to me. If what, you know, you are hiring a professional to do it, I can see you calling it a subcontract, or I see you calling it a repair and maintenance.
Yeah, fine.
Yeah.
I'm fine either way. It's not I'm just,
Yeah.
that does helps explain why numbers are higher or lower in different places. That's fine.
So if we return for a moment to that issue of whether or not we from what, it doesn't really matter what fund it comes from, providing we have a budget line for it.
Yeah.
Except that the cost is incurred by a misuse of that well, and presumably we're going to be compensated for that by the people who've used that well excessively over the few years. And so that capital will be distributed amongst the users of King Edward Bay and Blue Water.
Yeah, all of your costs are totaled. All of the water produced in King Edward Bay is calculated. And any of that water that's transferred to Blue Water Park, though that pro rata share of costs is picked up by Blue Water Park.
So
But I
that's
just want
44,000 revenue line item transfer from other water fund.
absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
I just wanted to confirm that that particular issue, which is almost certainly the cause of that sediment, is going to be carried on, and no doubt will be part of our discussions about the water sharing agreement or the cost sharing agreement. But there's another issue that I wanted to raise too, and that was this whether or not that 5% for 4 years is really acceptable. I mean, we have young families living in King Edward Bay, and I know they're finding it a stretch.
Mm-hmm.
And we've had very substantial increases over the last X number of years, as far as I can remember. We've never had a no. I think we actually did in the early days have 1 year where we didn't have an increase, but they've been very substantial. We don't need to go into the percentages because I'm sure you'd agree with that. And now we're proposing a 30% change over the next 4 years. And I'm just wondering about, I know you're interested and concerned about the capital, and that's good of you. I'm grateful that you got your eye on that. But the rate is just too high, and it's becoming excessive for some families. We don't want us to be amongst a community of reasonably affluent old age pensioners.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we want a proper community here, and these bills are becoming excessive. And so this is why I keep pressing you to talk to us about how you're trying to reduce costs. And here we see every year. Now, last year we had a 4-year plan, or a 5-year plan rather, which we rejected and agreed to only 1 year. And we come back this year, we want another 5-year plan, but an increase again of 30%. When we know that one of our wells has now been harmed. I'm just, I'm asking you to respond to this in some constructive and positive way. What are we doing continually, adding costs to young families who can't necessarily afford it?
Brian, I think the actual budget is you didn't have any repairs, any significant things you had to deal with. So I'll call them repairs. You didn't have to deal with a pump that wasn't working or the chlorinator that wasn't working. But if you don't budget for that, then when the chlorinator doesn't work, you have to come back and amend the budget to get the money to fix it.
I'm
So
completely with you. I'm completely with you. I'm not in need of education about that.
And we've got the Bank of Canada saying inflation's still too high. And I think, what did they come in at, Jonathan? Can you remember? It's like, was it 3.6 or 4 for the last year? So you can't budget to spend less than the cost of inflation.
I would agree with that.
Well, I'm sure that that's true, but I've been a manager and a senior manager of public services, on several continents, and I can tell you, you're always under pressure to find ways of saving money and to account for that. I still have yet to see some kind of cost cutting or cost savings plan. But in any case, let's move on from that because I know Jonathan has got a comment he wants to make.
Yeah, I just have a simple question, and hopefully it's got a simple answer, and I don't want to draw things out, but the cost of water that we sell is calculated on an annualized basis. It's my understanding.
Correct.
So in a given year, we spend a certain amount to produce water, and should some of that water be consumed by another development, another neighborhood, they pay based on our cost of production in that given year. If 5 years later, after a major utilization event, we then have to incur significant capital expenditures to revitalize or to repair damage that was caused in a prior year, we're not properly accounting, the water that was sold was not properly accounted for the effort that it took to produce that water if damages were done that were, discovered a number of years later. Am I being a bit amateur here, or is that correct?
You are correct in that. I've raised that issue on several occasions directly to Liam and also in other discussions. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So, Kristen, what number did you use for calculating the portion for blue water? Was it a percentage of the 118,291?
Yes, plus budgeted contributions to reserves. That's always
Yeah.
added too.
So the 60,000. So it wasn't the 60,883. It was the actual expenses plus 34,000.
It was the actual expenses plus what the budgeted contribution to reserve was going to
Okay,
be.
but the actual total expenses on what I'm looking at is 118,291, which includes 60,000 transfer to reserve. So was it a percentage of the 118, or was it a percentage of 118 minus 60 plus 34?
It was a percentage of total operating expenses plus whatever was budgeted to transfer to capital. So a percentage of 114, 144.
So it was your percentage.
Oh, sorry, actual plus budgeted transfer to reserve. So
Yeah.
118 equals the transfer to reserves.
So you're missing a subtotal in there because you don't have anything that's called total operating expenses on
before
this file.
transfers.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So basically it was
So the
yeah.
transfer is always done on actual expenditures plus what had been budgeted to transfer to reserve funds.
Right. So if in a given year, a couple years further on, we incur, for example, $100,000 expense to fix something that perhaps was damaged at some point in the past, and we don't sell much water that year because we now are interconnected and everybody's happy with ample water supply, we don't have an opportunity to recover that cost through water sales.
Well, you have recovered a piece of
It's
that
in your reserve.
because it's
in
gone
the
into
reserve.
they've paid for a portion of what goes into the reserve.
Okay.
A portion, whether
Yeah.
whether it's the right portion, given that the costs are increased, is another matter. So
But it's going to be a whole different system once we get into the cost sharing integrated system too.
It is. The bylaw remains, though, that we'll be responsible for our capital, and if the capital has been damaged in the same way as I lend somebody a car and they use the car and it works perfectly well, but they put 100,000 miles on it.
Because it could be argued by Bowen Bay and King Edward and Blue Water during this capital allocation exercise that's going to happen that King Edward Bay should be depreciated substantially because well number 1 is of questionable merit.
Those are assumptions that haven't been
I know.
determined yet.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not. I just wanted to raise that.
You might be giving them
more down about those assumptions, though. One final point I have, if no one else wants to raise it, is the issue about that's the stabilization money, the fee, $100, an additional $100. So understand that you're concerned that you're that your scheme might be so successful that you don't get the revenue that you need. I get that. Except that actually what we're being asked to do, if we're being absolutely honest with people, is we're asking people to pay $100 extra in the event that they use less water. And there's a question for me about that. I wonder if that's an ethical or reasonable thing to do. I know it's understandable from your perspective. You're interested in maintaining revenue. But I'm not sure that it is acceptable to ask people to pay $100 for being successful in using less water.
I guess the way I look at it is I would like to see your reserve fund higher. If that money's not spent, it will go into the reserve fund. If it's not collected this year, then we'll need to collect it next year and get it into that reserve fund. I don't look at it as, I mean, if that was money that was not going to be available to be used by King Edward Bay in future and it was going to go into the general fund or something, I would absolutely agree with your point. But the way that the systems are self-funded and the way that the money is kept in statutory reserves for the use of King Edward Bay, I don't feel the same level of concern about it that you do.
I'm sure you're not putting it in your own pocket, and I'm quite sure of that. And I'm not suggesting you doing anything improper, except that there is an ethical issue about asking people to do that. I'm thinking of the people who can't afford it. Jonathan, you have a comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to speak on behalf of people who are infrequently on the island, and I'm speaking very selfishly.
Mhm.
I feel personally that unconnected users and low water users, which is probably us because we're not there often, we're there on weekends and sometimes less frequently, that we should pay more despite our potentially lower consumption, because we still, when we arrive, turn the tap on and avail ourselves of good quality drinking water supplied by, well-maintained infrastructure. And so I would counter the argument, Brian, that for low water users, which are potentially weekenders and summer dwellers.
Well, we're quite low water users too here.
Yeah.
We live all the time.
But I would make the argument personally, and I'm only making that, I'm saying this not as a member of the LAC, but just as someone who, uses their property less frequently, that I would argue there should be some kind of a surcharge on that, because if all of a sudden, if half the residents in our community were strictly weekenders, we would not be able to support our infrastructure, especially, for a long period of time, given the depleting capital reserve. And that's why I would argue also that we should do a rolling average. I think unconnected users should be paying much more, because when they do finally build, they will benefit
Issue, isn't it?
from this incredible infrastructure.
Mhm.
That's the issue.
What about just reviewing how we build that, and you take every lot that's either hooked up or even not connected yet, you divide that into our operating costs and the capital that you need to raise to protect us for the long future, and that's divided equally among every one of the houses, and then set a target of water use that looks sustainable for the development. So I'll just throw a number out that it's 65 gallons a day. Everybody can get 65 gallons a day, but if you go past 65 gallons, you have a rapid escalation of cost per gallon fee that you charge. That way, all our assets, all our operating is equally divided among all the homes, whether you have 2 people or 8 people living in the home or nobody. But if you start using water exceeding the natural stability of our infrastructure, then we start charging people, and that would give them incentive perhaps to look at alternatives to extracting water from our aquifers, but maybe doing rain collection or doing other reduced saving. I mean, there's lots of other little strategies that people could do, but that way they feel the pain of excess use and they can see that in their billing. I'm using my target is 65, you're doing good. I think of the sign you guys have on the roadside telling people at what level of concern our water levels are at, and it gives people a target. I don't think we have a target that we're educating the community on, nor are they feeling the pain of it. And some people can afford huge amount, I get it, but maybe if we have realigned that cost base, that you get our community water system gets what we need on the minimum funds to operate it and protect our assets down the road to replace it. But we come up with a number. I don't know what that number is, but like I said, 65 gallons a day. And if you start going over that, boom, you start getting charged.
I would say to that, Bruce, I don't have a problem with tweaking a plan once it's in. My goal is to get the plan in and then we can always tweak it from there. So I'm not a huge fan of kind of back of the napkin decisions on the fly kind of thing, but
Sure, no, I understand.
yeah.
Just food
But
for thought.
like it's my goal. It's I'll be honest with you, it's my goal to get the model in, get the model established. And once that's established, we can start tweaking it all measures of different ways.
And the variable costs to operate the system is not something we necessarily know, and they're usually not all that big. Because you've got to test every day, you've got to, so the variables are just running cores and chlorine
Chlorine and hydro, basically.
and yeah, so they're a very minuscule amount of the bill.
Okay, well, I think maybe not much progress we can make there, but the structure of the thing is interesting. I think you've got lots of support, Kristen, for pursuing a more aggressive strategy for those people who are not connected. But I think what the message that I would offer is that we need to be transparent about what we're asking people for. If we're asking people for 7%, let's say it's 7%. If we're asking for 5%, because it's demonstrably 5%, well, fair enough. If we want to change the budgeting arrangements to make it absolutely clear and so that we get billed 4 times a year, because that helps your cash flow and that in the long run it saves us money, well, let's just say that. And I think people are much more likely to accept that. So there's a bit of transparency I would ask of you, but I hope we can be supportive in that other way.
So, are you recommending some suggestions for the communication to the public that goes out?
Yeah, I think we should say that you're proposing 7% a year. I mean, I have to say I've got reservations about that. I've got reservations about agreeing to a 5-year plan. I personally wouldn't recommend that. I think you should come back every year and explain why you need another 5%.
Mm-hmm.
That would be my proposal to you. And so I'm a bit anxious about just giving you carte blanche. And I'm not you personally, the municipality carte blanche.
Well, we do come back every year.
Yes, we do, but we'd already agreed a plan.
It's always a new plan every year. It's a new 5-year plan every year.
This is the proposal. It's true.
So I've got a question. I was just looking at the numbers. If you were talking about wanting that your non-connected rate was like 50 or 60% of your connected rate, the flat rate. So why is the January to June rate 198 and the next 2 quarters, July to September is 198 and October to December is 198? I would have expected January to June to be double 198.
Because it's 198 is a portion of 324, which is the flat rate.
Okay, but you've got a flat rate for January to June of 648.
Because it's 2 quarters. Oh, you know what? That might be a mistake in my math.
Yeah,
So yeah, you're
you
right.
don't have 2 quarters for January to June.
Correct, you're right.
Solve some of Jonathan's problem.
You're right. I've left out 1 quarter in the flat rate non-connected line. So that should actually be double. There should be another 47.52 there.
No, it should be 198 times 2.
Another quarter.
That's what I said.
I thought you said another 47. Oh, 47.
That's what the revenue would be.
Okay, my stupid little bars are blocking the right-hand column. You know, the ones that let you mark it up.
Yeah. No, you're right. I've made a mistake in my estimate there.
Okay, so there should, yeah. So that gets your revenue up to over 80,000.
Yeah.
There's
does
one
that.
one further thing that I might ask of you, just asked about, and that is the utilization of 12,000 from reserves. What was that about?
Just a provision, in the event that there was some, a pump that needed to be replaced or an electrical panel or something like that. It's just a provision. Patrick hasn't identified anything specific that he wants to, replace or work on.
Now, there's a question though about whether it comes from reserves or from other kinds of maintenance and replacement. We're trying to preserve our reserve, aren't we?
Yes.
So we want to tap into that reserve as little as possible until we have a major expenditure, and using it to supplement our revenue or our planned budget. I think we need special circumstances in order to do that, don't you? If we're going to reserve.
Typically we fund the reserves at a specific level. And then when the capital expenditure arises, then we take it from that reserve. That way if we can kind of smooth the contribution over the course of the planning period. Yeah, we always fund the capital expenditures from reserves. If we fund them from operating budgets, you'll see them go like this. And that's not something that is really manageable for most people. So that's why we always fund the reserve at a specific level. When the capital expenditure arises, that's the source of funding we take it from.
Who's throwing the dishes around out there?
Yeah.
Must be
Oh, I
Bruce.
can't turn my mute off.
Ah,
Unfortunately, sorry, I moved to another area.
How funny. All right. Well, thank you for that, Kirsten. But presumably it has no ultimate effect on the size of our capital reserve. It's just that I'm anxious about preserving that for as long as possible, as I know you are.
I am.
All right. Any other questions on Kristen's contribution? All right. Well, then let's move on. Except that we need to a recommendation or proposal. Is there someone who would want to provide this proposal? I guess, Kristen, without rewriting any of this, I'm not sure what you feel you could take away from this discussion. You're still keen on pursuing a 5% increase, effectively 30% over 4 years, 5 years rather.
Well, I'm not drafting a rate bylaw for 5 years. I redo the rate bylaw year after year, and I come back with a new plan year after year. As a requirement to meet my statutory obligation, I need to provide you with a 5-year plan.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're not happy with years 2 to 5, you could amend the resolution to say, King Edward Bay Water System Local Service Area, 5-year financial plan for year 2024 as presented. And that way you're only saying yay to 2024, which I think is what we did last year.
Yeah, you did.
You're amending that to 7% now, or whatever it happens to be.
No. I'm just changing the resolution about the budget.
I can put a motion forward that we recommend to council that we approve the 2024 financial plan as presented.
Well, it's going to be as amended, I guess, because you're going to, are you just going to amend the rates, Kristen, to still end up with 70,000 or 76,000? Or are you going to, because of that unconnected
$4,700 discrepancy.
Yeah.
That is just an estimate, workings. I made a mistake in my estimate. The flat rate connected is, I can pull it here.
It's in your budget summary.
My revenue is, so the flat rate connected is 324. The flat rate unconnected is 198. And
Per
the
quarter.
rates are,
But your estimated revenue,
yeah,
is-
but that's not the rate bylaw, Councillor Morris. That's just my
That's
back of
your
the napkin math
estimate
to
of revenue.
estimate, to ensure that rates set at these, this hybrid rate is going to generate the revenue that we need and we won't fall short.
but are you going to change when you actually send the bill out? The January to June flat rate non-connected will be double 198,
Correct.
or is it going to be double? Are they all going to be slightly smaller numbers so that you still come up to 76,000? Because if it's double 198, then you're going to come up to 80,000.
Yeah, it's gonna be double 198.
So we'll actually end up raising 80,000 of revenue.
If everybody drinks all that water that,
That's
that
down
I
in-
estimated.
In the October and yeah.
Yeah, so the
Yeah.
rates are on page 12 of 16 of your agenda package.
Mhm. And that table made perfect sense. You just need.
Yeah.
So the rates are in the top row there.
So is that fair to just make a motion to recommend the approval of the 2024 financial plan as presented?
Well,
The 2024 budget within the 2024-2028 financial plan. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
all those in favor?
Yeah.
Sure.
Yep.
No one against, so that's passed. I will second that, by the way.
And then we need to also make a motion, is that correct, on the metered billing plan?
Correct.
So I'll make another motion that the KEB LAC recommend to council the hybrid metered rate billing plan, it's a mouthful, as presented by Chief Financial Officer at the meeting of March 14th, 2024 be approved.
Seconded. All in favor? Yeah. I'm assuming you're saying yes. Anyone against? Bruce?
Yep, I'm good.
You're good. All right. All right.
Yes.
Then that's approved. Thank you very much. I hope that's helpful to you despite all that discussion, Kristen.
It's all helpful. Thank you so much.
All right. And now we have other matters here. We've looked at 5-year financial plan. We've gone through all of this, haven't we? All of item 5.
Yeah.
All right. Council, item council. I don't know if anyone else managed to sit through that, but I certainly did. I found it very interesting. Thank you for the heads up.
Yeah.
Any comments that would like to make, Alison?
I don't think so, because I think the major thing that was applicable to you was the GARP, and Patrick's already covered that off in his presentation.
Okay. Thank you very much. And information items. Are there any comments that people would like to make or about the council strategic plan? What 7.2, any comments anyone would like to make about the excerpt, really the West Side Financial? Or the financial policy? Nothing then to add? Okay, question period. Any further questions? Well, that's nice to hear. Next meeting to be determined. Now that would really, it's up to you, isn't it? Let's not try and determine a meeting this minute. That's,
No, I expect
no.
we'll be looking at a July meeting and thinking that forward ahead, then we'll probably be meeting in our new community center. So that's
Oh,
kind of
wow.
exciting.
oh, wow. Can we actually go to that meeting? That would be good.
Maybe we'll have an in-person meeting.
Love that. I'll bring wine.
I don't think we're going to have drinking in municipal facilities.
Oh dear. All right. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, look, in view of that, we seem to have gone through the agenda, and as there's no further questions or comments, we've done next meeting. Let's adjourn this meeting. Thank you very much for all your time and effort.
Thank you. Nice to see you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
Bye.
Everyone, good night. Thank you, Brian, for chairing, and Brian for vice chairing.
Yeah, you bet. Nice to